Today on The State of Us, scores in history hit all-time lows and the power of the spoken word. Only 13% of 8th graders met proficiency standards for U.S. history, meaning they could explain major themes, periods, events, people, ideas, and turning points in the country's history. About a fifth of students scored at or above the proficient level in civics. Only 13%.
13% in U.S. history, 20% in civics.
Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal and the senior resident historian here at True Chat, Mr. Lance Jackson.
Hi, folks.
He's cheerful today. We're talking about history and civics and what a great job our country's doing at making sure our students understand them.
I want to start here, and I've made some notes for Justin, but in my time as a teacher, I remember when No Child Left Behind and the third grade reading guarantee from the federal government, and we started to emphasize reading and math, more reading, more math, more reading, more math. And we started to take gym and art classes away, and we took recesses away, some school districts did, so that we could spend more time on math and reading. And what was the cost of all that? Well, sitting in those lovely curriculum meetings that I had to do because I had been there so long, it was my turn to take that duty. Elementary teachers were not teaching social studies. And when I say elementary, I'm talking K through 6. So should anybody be surprised that after we've been at it for 15 to 20 years of forcing math and reading down students' throat, without recess, without art, without music in the elementary schools, and limited social studies. I mean, you do maybe a reading assignment in English class that has to do with a historical document or historical moment in American history. And then you wonder why, as 8th graders, when the first time they've ever taken American history or studied civics and they don't do well. I mean, who'd have thunk it, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know why anybody's surprised. And so now we have children who have come through this system where they've been bombarded with math and science and reading, but have gotten no social studies. Why is anybody surprised that it's the worst scores ever? You don't know what you're not taught. And I know we were supposed to stay on track here, but go ahead. It doesn't matter to me. I'm on a roll here. Well, no, but guess what? Math and reading scores are down as well.
Yeah.
Across the nation.
Well, that's our other article.
Right? I mean, that's the next step. But we're sitting here and I'm telling you, we've spent the last 20 years doing all this stuff on reading and math. And yet, guess what? Reading and math scores are down too.
Well, these are the lowest levels on record. So well before, right, the pandemic. The average score in 2022 for 8th grade students in U.S. history was 258 out of a possible 500.
Just got over half.
And the average,
in our local school district, that's almost a passing grade.
The average civics score
with the new in our local schools, that's almost a passing grade.
Yeah.
So see, why are we complaining?
We're about as good, just a little better than the flip of a coin. So.
Yeah, you got a little more than half right. Hey, that's a D-. You get to move on.
That should make us feel really good, too, about the people that are going to grow up and vote and make decisions. And
now you're going into where is this all going to lead? And you're exactly right.
And civics.
Yeah.
Civics.
This is the voting part.
Yes. 150 was the average score out of a possible 300.
So that was right at 50%.
Right, they were just
so civics was, at least history, we scored 8 points over 50%.
That's right. That one we
scored
hit on
51.6% in history. We only scored a flat 50% in civics.
So according to the data, 31% of 8th graders performed below basic levels in civics in 2022. That indicates that those students were unable to correctly answer questions asking them to identify tenets like common characteristics shared by all constitutional governments.
Maybe we need to make TikTok videos or YouTube shorts on history. And get kids to watch that so they can learn enough to answer these questions.
They give us some sample questions.
Some
sample questions from the test. Question number 1 is from the year 2001, okay? And this was asked in 2001 on the test. At the time Columbus arrived in the Americas, most of the area that is now called Mexico was controlled by people called the... So the possible answers are A, Aztecs, B, Inuit, or C, Apache, or D, Iroquois.
It's the Aztecs.
Yes. Okay, congrats. So we got one right. Question 2, which of the following is an example of people using power without having the right to do so? A, a police officer arrests someone because the person looks suspicious. B, a governor vetoes a bill passed by the state legislature. C, a group of people against nuclear power march outside of a nuclear power plant. Or D, the owner of a newspaper prints her own opinions in the newspaper. A would be the correct answer.
Exactly.
A police officer arrests someone because the person looks suspicious.
I was just giving the audience time to think about that one.
That was a question from the 2006 test. What do all constitutional governments have? A, legal limits on political power. B, a Bill of Rights. C, a president at the head of the government. Or D, separation of church and state.
A.
A, legal limits on political power. And remember that we cited before that only 31% of 8th graders performed below basic levels, which meant that they could not even tell you the correct answer to that question.
1 out of 3.
1994 question. Susan B. Anthony was a leader who helped A.
I don't even need A, B, C, D. But go ahead.
Women win the right to vote. B. Children win the right to an education. C. Older people win the right to get Social Security. Or D. Immigrants win the right to come to the United States.
You notice, folks, these answers aren't even close to one another. I mean, it's like it's the correct answer should be obvious if you've been alive for a while. I think it is A, she helped women get the right to vote.
Yes, that's the correct answer.
A suffragette.
A suffragette. And the last question from 2006, the Constitution requires that the president's nominations to the Supreme Court be approved by the Senate. This is an example of A, checks and balances, B, legislative supremacy, C, judicial review, or D, federalism.
Man, that's a tough one because most people use debit cards now. But I think it's checks and balances.
Checks and balances.
All right.
Answer A was correct. So, by the way, if you answered A on all 5 questions, then you got it right. But to your point, I mean, we read those and we're chuckling and laughing, but isn't it concerning to any of us listening, hopefully to the show, that only...
Well, why is it concerning to you, Justin? I mean, only 13% of 8th graders
met proficiency standards. Only 13%.
13 in U.S. history.
So if we go down the street to the local high school and we randomly select 10 8th graders.
Well, these are 8th graders.
These are 8th graders. So we'll go the other way down the street, the opposite direction. There's no sidewalk, so we'll have to drive out there because you can't walk to that school.
Yeah. Why would you build a school somewhere where students could not walk?
Well, you
to
wouldn't
school?
want to do that.
No.
So, but we'll drive out there and we'll pull 10 random 8th graders out of class. And what you're telling me is if I pull 10 of them out, chances are only one of them is going to be able to pass those 5 questions. But that's the thing that should be, it should be concerning to anybody listening, because the idea that these are the people that we're going to, these are the people that, I mean, we want people.
No. Who are we going to turn the country over to? The 13% that passed.
Well,
they're going to run things, okay? That's the case in point.
Because nobody else is going to know.
Right. They don't know how it works.
But you're going to be allowed to vote. You can vote even though you don't have any inkling of an understanding about. Thankfully, they didn't ask how the president's elected, because I wouldn't want to know what the percentage of people that could get that one right is.
But voting just has to do with, you do have to actually go somewhere or go online and sign your name and put your address.
Yeah.
You have to register.
In this state,
how many of people won't even bother to register to vote?
Or will know how.
Or know. Well, it's real simple, though. All you have to do is put your name and address.
As long as you can read and write.
You said that wasn't until the next segment.
Good thing it's time for the next segment then. So now, if this wasn't a bleak enough picture, folks, don't you worry. It can get bleaker still, because supposedly what we sacrificed civics and history for was in the name of making reading and math better, and maybe science too. But, spoiler, that's not exactly what happened. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. National test results, according to the Wall Street Journal, show that reading and math scores for 13-year-olds have continued to worsen since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, that's not terribly surprising. We kind of knew that. However, average scores on the 2023 National Assessment of Educational Progress, known as the nation's report card, show 13-year-olds declined 4 points in reading and 9 points in math compared with 2020. For mathematics, it was the largest drop for 13-year-olds seen in 50 years. The average score in math fell to 271 out of a possible 500, reaching its lowest point since 1990. For reading, the average score fell to 256, falling to its lowest point since 2004.
Wait a minute, 256? I got to represent the U.S. history teachers. They had a 258. So U.S. history was better than reading. So if they do figure out how to vote, will they be able to read the ballot?
Well, anybody's guess. They can flip a coin if they're not sure, unless, of course, there's more than two options, and then that could be.
I mentioned in the first segment how the history of education, we did away with, recess and PE classes and art and music. Does anybody not in charge not read the studies? Young people's brains do best when they're given the arts and when they're given recess and physical education. When you treat the whole person, the brain works better. I mean, think about you as an adult sitting there in your chair at work. Do you have music playing? Does that help stimulate you? Do you have artwork? Do you get up from your desk and walk down to get a coffee or a soda or a snack and come back because your mind's foggy? Right? Yet we're going to deny children who have an abundance of energy and whose brain is just developing at a rapid pace. We're going to deny them all that stimuli that will help them become even better learners. We're going to say, well, sorry, we're going to cut the choir teacher because, you can sing whenever you want, or we'll just play 20 minutes of music here on the record player. Really? The history, the math, the fractions, the teamwork, all the things you learn there, right? And art. Who needs art class? We'll just give that to them 20 minutes a week, if that much. And the teacher who's also teaching them social studies and science can do art. He can just get out the crayons and they can color a picture. Really? And you're not going to stimulate the creativity and the desire to learn about different artists and, oh, wait a minute, that would be history as well. Are you getting my point here? And talk about PE and recess. I mean, have you ever been around 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds? They have more energy than, let them go burn it off, and they come back in, and that's gotten them ready to go. And just like it helps you get your brain going again. So not only did we do away with social studies and civics, but in many cases we did away with the arts and with physical education. And it's like, we all need that to make our brains work at its highest capacity. Okay, I'm off my soapbox again, Justin. Just wanted to get that in there for all my teachers who teach now what they call specials in the elementary school.
I'm really glad that they have two graphs with this article, not just because of my, appreciation for visual representations of data, but because in this case, it makes it super clear that the pandemic is not the only reason.
Right?
The high point, folks, like the peak of this was somewhere around 2010. And since then, it's been steadily getting worse. Now, it dropped off further after the pandemic, okay? But it's not like, oh, we were getting better and then the pandemic hit us and then we got worse. No, we were getting worse, the pandemic hit us, and then we got even worse. Like that's what happened, okay? So just for everybody that, well, it's a temporary, well, that's not what the data
right. We were going
saying.
Downhill for 8 or 9 years.
Already, right. We were going down.
Right.
We were going down.
And obviously, if you're struggling and then have something major like that happen,
it's going to make it worse.
It's going to make it worse. That's obvious. But to your point, right? We weren't ascending throughout the teens and making advances.
It's not like we reversed a trend. We just accelerated a trend. The data also show that gaps between high and low performing students grew during the pandemic. So the other thing not captured here in looking at the average score is the idea of the top percentile and the bottom percentile, right? That gap used to be closer, and now that gap is getting wider. So not only is the average score worse, more students are doing worse, but also the students doing worse are further away from the students that do well.
Isn't it interesting that it also then is reflected in the economic status of our country, which we say the haves and the have-nots? The same thing is happening in education. You have this gap. You have, it's like, how do you bridge that gap? I mean, I guess that's the third segment, but it's like, okay, the gap's there. So not only do you not have a lot of students who are learning, but they're learning less than their peers. And so now you've got dual problems.
The president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics said 8th grade classes lay a foundation for math skills that are often prerequisites for high school graduation. Sean Reardon, who's a professor at Stanford University's Center for Education Policy, said U.S. schools are ill-equipped to provide tools that could bring students back up to speed. Despite an influx of federal relief funding, issues including labor shortages have hindered districts' efforts to provide students with fixes such as high-quality, high-intensity tutoring. His research, based on an analysis of school districts in 41 states, found that disruptions caused by the pandemic had, by the spring of 2022, cost the average U.S. student a half a year in lost math learning and a third of a year in lost reading skills. Districts with large numbers of minority students or high levels of poverty fared worse.
And we've done shows on that, right? That children of poverty have a lot of struggles. And here it's being shown that then they also have trouble in the classroom and they're falling further and further behind. And it's just sad, right? I mean, this is our nation's future. And the federal government, rightly, I guess, question mark, has given school districts money or access to money to do something, but the schools are not using it. I know that locally,
or not using it effectively.
They had a program. You find it interesting. We've talked about how students lose over the summer knowledge that they've gained because they're out of school for 2 to 3 months. They offered a program where kids could come back to school. And we live in a high poverty area. Over 70% of our students get free or reduced meals at school based on their family income, poverty level.
1 and 2 are classified as economically disadvantaged by the Ohio Department of Education.
There you go.
In our school district.
And our school system used some of their federal dollars to create a program where kids could come back to school 2 weeks before school started to kind of get caught up and get running, to hit the ground running when school started to learn. And 0 people enrolled. But the school district, that's where they spent their money, was to buy a program, to develop it, and 0 students were helped by it.
Good that we spent that money.
To your point. Right. To your point that they're not using it effectively. You know, I mean, because I don't know. It's flabbergasted when you say, well, the government spent the money. Yeah, the government gave them money, but then they develop a program that nobody attended.
Well, for some reason, the idea, it seems like for the last several decades, has been, well, we've got this troubling thing happening in education. So the answer is that we'll just figure out how to spend more money per student. Because if we just spend more money, that'll fix it.
Or we'll get, and I'm sorry, this is going to get me in trouble.
Okay.
Or we're going to get parents involved.
Right.
Because parents know what needs to be taught better than the educator does.
Well, in my mind, what we've done, Lance, the past...
Because I know that I know how to fix a car better than the mechanic that I take it to. And I know how to run your office better than you do because I majored in education. So therefore, my business skills are better than yours. I mean, is there...
What we've done
but we've also taken, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to... One last thing. We've also taken...
He's got thoughts, folks.
We've also taken local control away from the schools. That's what the national report card results that we're reading is all about. We've had 20 years of the federal standards that everybody's trying to reach. Do we need to go back? Now, here's where, if you're not already shooting me off a nasty email because I'm attacking parents, I'm supporting you. Shouldn't maybe as parents we go back to local control of what's taught and so the education is different around the country? Because where you grow up and what people in your area do maybe should dictate what you learn. Have we tried this experiment of a national education policy and it's failed and it's time to go back to what we did before, which was local control of curriculum, and the local school board got to decide with parental input on what was to be taught and what was not to be taught? Go ahead, Justin. I'll sit on my hands.
So what we've done over the past 2 to 3 decades, while you were talking, I was making some notes. We've nationalized education. We've standardized education. We've thrown out civics. We've taken away recess. And we've prioritized math and reading. And the result, just what these test scores say, is that we have the worst math and reading scores since at least 1990. Actually, excuse me, the worst math scores in 50 years. 50 years. And we have the worst reading scores since 1990. And we now have an all-time low, never been worse, history and civics score. So all this...
Has it worked?
All this scientificizing of, that's not a word, but scientificizing of education. We said, well, education is a science. If we nationalize it, if we standardize it, if we get rid of all that garbage stuff called civics and history, and we take away recess because that can't possibly be important, and we don't invest much in the arts, and we prioritize. We're just going to drill them on math and reading and really push that science too. That will make them better at these things. And according to the standardized tests that were developed to test this, it has gotten worse. And not just worse, but it's worse in some cases than it's ever been. Worse than it's been. The best thing that we're doing is the worst it's been in 20 plus years. The worst one is worst of all time, and the intermediary is the worst in 50 years. So I think you would be very hard pressed.
Definition of insanity is what?
You would be super hard pressed to claim that any of this, garbage, is doing what we were told it should do. And notice when I say nationalize there, I mean, breaking that down, you mentioned taking away local control. That's part of what I'm putting in there, right? Well, if we just make sure that everybody's taught the same thing, the same way, then it'll be like science, and then everything will equal out the same. Of course, never mind that our science tells us that no two people are exactly the same, and that when you try to formalize people, that it rarely works well.
And, we took that idea from Europe, but in Europe, they don't send everybody to high school. They give a test in 8th grade, and if you don't score high enough, you don't go on to high school, you go and learn a trade. So we took something from people, but again, we just took bits and pieces.
Well, we like this part.
Right.
But this other part's stupid. So what we're gonna do is take what we like and then hope that it works the same way without doing the whole thing.
And guess what?
It doesn't.
There you go.
You mean that when you look at a program that's successful and you say, well, I don't like these bits, so we're just not going to do those. And then you are surprised that it doesn't have the same results.
But stay tuned, because we've got some answers. We've got at least one thing that we could do.
We do.
That could help, possibly help.
Power of the spoken word? That sounds like some old fogey thing there. Power of the spoken word. Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. An emeritus professor of English at Emory University and an editor at First Things worked on the standards in Georgia and Arkansas. And a president of the Association of Literary Scholars, Critics and Writers, and a professor of English at the University of Hudson wrote an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal entitled Kids and the Power of the Spoken Word. In Georgia, students will be required to build, quote, background knowledge by reciting all or part of significant poems and speeches. The Arkansas plan calls for students to recite a passage from a well-known poem, play, or speech. That's it. An old-fashioned demand that students memorize the Gettysburg Address or Hamlet's To Be or Not to Be, or Gwendolyn Brooks' We Real Cool, and recite it to an audience. Who could object to lodging memorable words in teenage heads otherwise packed with TikTok videos? English teachers, that's who. It's rote learning instead of critical analysis. However, however, these two, the authors of this piece, say that's wrong, period. Recitation allows students to experience a text as a living thing, ready to be taken up by a new generation. Committing a poem or speech to memory means stepping into the author's shoes and pondering what he meant. Deciding which words to stress when reciting means thinking about what those words mean. This is why public speaking was once a requirement at many colleges and universities.
Yeah, you go back to your lovely John Adams and founding fathers there, Justin. Recitation was a class that they always had to take. They had to stand up and recite things and learn things.
Couldn't be any use in that.
No, nothing. And this is the old fogey section. So just very quickly, you want to fix all the problems. I've got it for you. Okay. We're going to go back to having a spelling test every Friday. You're going to get 20 words on Monday, and you're going to use them during out of the week on different lessons. And you're going to have a spelling test on Friday. You're also going to learn your math facts up to 12 times 12. You're going to learn cursive writing, and you're going to have to recite something. And not only going to have to recite, but we're going to ask you to interpret it as well. What did it mean? What does the author mean? What does it mean to you? Okay. Bam. Fixed all the education problems. Because you do know, folks, that we don't teach cursive writing anymore in most of our public schools. We also...
How long are we teaching even handwriting?
Oh, we don't do that. There's no such thing. You don't need that because, you've got computers. We put a computer in your hand and we don't teach typing either, though. We get kids in school who do the hunt and peck methods, but they've got a computer. And, we don't need to learn our math facts because you have a calculator. But if you don't understand how the numbers work, then it doesn't make any difference what you're plugging in. You plug in the numbers, but you don't know what it means. You don't understand that interpretation. Well, my point is all of this is a lot of this has to do with rote memory. And how can you be a knowledgeable person who's going to make decisions about economy and voting and the direction of your country if you don't have the basis, right, of some basic information that we all can share from? And the thing is, these teachers are saying, well, that's not critical enough. How can you critically analyze any piece if you don't have some knowledge? It was like we're putting the cart before the horse. So in the school that I'd like to open up, if anybody wants to donate money and find us a building, we will do spelling tests. We will do math facts. We will do cursive writing and recess and the arts and recitation. And I guarantee you I'll turn out as good a worker as what schools are now. And students who will be successful if they decide to go on to college.
Why is writing important? Well, fine motor skills are the strongest predictor. Did you hear that? The strongest predictor of special education referral and the second strongest predictor of kindergarten retention. Children in preschools now spend about 37% of their day engaged in fine motor skill activities, and only about 10% of that time is spent with paper and pencil. But kindergartners spend nearly half their day engaged in fine motor activities and nearly half that time on paper and pencil tasks. Introducing more writing tasks can help preschoolers make the leap to kindergarten successfully. Children with stronger fine motor skills do better not only in literacy tasks such as letter writing, but also in kindergarten math. Early fine motor skills also support later academic success. These skills are associated with ongoing reading and mathematics achievement as late as 5th grade.
Wait a minute. I mean, you've got data that supports some of what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Amazing.
I was just doing it anecdotally and knowing that that's, seemed to work for my generation. And I mean, sometimes things aren't broken. And sometimes, another old saying is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure. Do we need to teach some technology? Of course. Right? Do kids today, are they doing things at an earlier age than I ever did in school? You bet. Okay. I mean, they're learning, my children who are in their 30s now were learning things in 4th and 5th grade that I learned in junior high or as a freshman in high school. I get it that there are certain things we have to teach now that are important because they didn't exist when I was going to school. But I also know that if you give someone the basics, then they can grasp any knowledge that they want, which is the whole point of reading, right? And writing. If you know how to read and write, as Abraham Lincoln said, you can teach yourself almost anything because you can pick up a book and read it and you can write about it and write questions down and talk to other people about it and you can learn it.
And one of the fundamental
and
reading
we don't do that anymore.
Is learning to write.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and like you said, it's that fine motor skill. And if you don't put that pencil and paper in front of people or a crayon with a picture to color, how else do they learn that? Not by throwing a video game in front of them or a screen in front of them and letting them peck away on it. And again, if you don't get the foundation, how are you supposed to build on it? We have all kinds of biblical references about that, right? Where do you build your house? Because the better the foundation, how long is your house going to last? The better your foundation in education, how much better will your future learning be?
A lot better. We stopped teaching handwriting, cursive. I mean, cursive is a type of handwriting, right? We stopped teaching handwriting now early in elementary school. Studies show that handwriting instruction can improve legibility and fluency through the 9th grade. In addition, the overall quality of writing and the length of writing passages can also increase through grade 9 with handwriting instruction. But we're stopping it.
I have students at the
first,
youth center
second, third grade
who can't sign their name. You talk about a legal document. They cannot sign it. They print it. I say, whoa. Where's your signature? Well, I don't know cursive writing. Oh, wait a minute. In two of the most famous documents to American history, I'll close with this. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are both written in cursive. Well, I know, but I can go to a computer.
You can just look it up.
I can look.
You just Google it.
Right. Because somebody will translate that for me and I can trust them. I don't have to be able to read it myself. Not to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, but
no.
You know, if nobody can read cursive, then we can just tell them what all the documents say.
The biggest thing is that handwriting activates the brain, folks. And if you expect good readers, good mathematicians, it's all about it's what
good
we find.
Thinkers,
it's what we
thinkers,
find
right?
With music and art, right? It's not at all unlike those. Handwriting is a form of art, right? It is a type of art. And calligraphy, generally speaking, was actually something that was praised and renowned, especially, a couple hundred years ago. That was a big deal. People could make really good money, if they were good calligraphers. And having decent calligraphy was also something that made you, respectable. And interestingly, some of those people were really smart that were really good at calligraphy. And one of the reasons is because the more advanced the writing is, again, the science tells us the more neural connections are being made when you're writing. In other words, the more learning and the more primed for learning you are when you have to write.
The more you'll learn.
Right. Which is very distinct from typing. They activate different components of the brain. And certain components of the brain aren't activated at all when you type. But typing is important. But to your point, we got PEC typers because we don't even teach them how to do that. We say, well, you don't need to know how to write, but apparently you don't need to know how to type either. So we've even gone away from, you really don't need to know how to put words anywhere into computers.
But going back to all that
paper.
money we're throwing at reading and math, and the scores are still.
We'll just keep spending.
The scores have gone down for the last 15 years.
Yep. We need more money. That'll fix it. Okay. Why we do this show today, Lance? There was a reason.
Well, yeah, because where we work here at True Chat, they have a mission. And that mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And hopefully you've enjoyed today's show. And we've followed those mottos. And you tell your family and friends, and they say, well, it sounds like something I'd like to listen to. Tell them as a podcast, they can find The State of Us on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us releases new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Those same episodes are heard on the weekends on AM and FM radio stations, across the United States and parts of Canada. For The State of Us, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to producer Bradley Butch, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.